So I've seen a couple of people mention this in the last couple of days in my comment section, and so I wanted to let people know what it is. If you've seen people say it's the strategy of Cloward, Piven, what they're referring to is a strategy. I'll tell you about it. Some people keep mentioning it, so that's why I'm doing this video. So, what is the Cloward-Piven strategy? The Cloward-Piven strategy was developed in 1966 by Americans Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, both sociologists and political activists. The Cloward-Piven strategy focused on overloading the United States public welfare system in order to precipitate a crisis, which would ultimately lead to replacing the welfare system with a national system of guaranteed annual income and thus an end to poverty. An ancillary consequence of the strategy includes shoring up of the Democratic Party, which at the time was splintered by pluralistic interests. Another side would be relieving local and state governments of public welfare burden, since the burden would be shifted to the federal government. In other words, a manifestation of socialism. Taxpayers, of course, would cover the costs in either case. So this is a quote from one of them. Quote, would produce bureaucratic distribution in welfare agencies and fiscal disruption in local and state governments that would deepen existing divisions among elements in the big city Democratic coalition. The remaining white middle class, the working class ethnic groups, and the growing minority poor. To avoid a further weakening of that historic coalition, a national Democratic administration would be constrained to advance a federal solution to poverty that would override local welfare failures, local class and racial conflicts, and local revenue dilemmas. The ultimate objective of this strategy is to wipe out poverty by establishing a guaranteed annual income, which will be questioned by some, because the ideal of individual social and economic mobility has deep roots. Even activists seem reluctant to call for national programs to eliminate poverty by the outright redistribution of income. Yes, because most people that have a moral compass, first of all, know this is manipulative. It is people, because they can't get their agenda done through getting the people on board. They deliberately do it through the backdoor way, like our unions, nursing unions are doing. There's a reason I go hard at them. It's because they are not supporting health. They are hurting health deliberately, because they are using this model and they know it. The people at the top of the National Nurses United and the American Nurses Association know exactly what they're doing. The difference here is that behind the federal government, because what happens when you have open borders? You have a bunch of people that will destroy everything, the education system, the healthcare. It's too much. It overruns it. It weakens everything until it breaks. And again, the hospital CEOs were on board with this. Force America to her knees, so that they can bring in their socialist system. That's why AOC sucks. That's why Bernie Sanders sucks. That's why a lot of these people just outright suck. And this is why Obama, that scumbag, sorry, just he is, brought in Obamacare, because really we're not a socialist country, but our healthcare system, when Obamacare came in, became a socialist country. Or became a socialist, we have socialized medicine. That's the reason it's gotten worse over time, not better. And the unions know exactly the reason for that. So for years, I've heard liberals say, oh, Republicans don't care. They don't want to have an annual income for people. No, it's quite the opposite, actually. Here's where I'm going to defend Republicans, okay? No, if you want to support putting people on government welfare programs, then you make them slaves to that government. You do, because then at any time, it's shown throughout history, but for whatever reason, far left radical liberals never seem to want to go by history, probably because they just want to repeat it, because they're just like the Nazis that used to do it before. That's just my guess. So the people that care are the Republicans in this situation. Some of them are on board with it, of course. And normally I do say it's both sides here. But in this case, I've watched for years Republicans say, no, that's not caring for putting everybody on government welfare system only enslaves them, and it does. Can we not see that at this point? Who would want to be dependent on the Biden government for anything? Oh my God, could you imagine? You want to be a slave to that system. And that's what ends up happening. So that's what they want. The Democrats want slaves. Yes. They'll never say that. Of course, Bernie Sanders will never say he's an outright communist, okay? But he is. And there is no political party, as I've said, that is communism. It's straight up genocide. It's not a political party, which is why Bernie never says the truth, that he's a communist. But all those young millennials think that that's that government-run healthcare or government paying us, that's the way it should be, right? That's what they all think. Because why? The universities. Yeah, the universities, the idiots at the universities taught them this bullshit because they were, they're on board. They all of these stupid people. I really see communists as stupid people and socialists. Because they're not about wanting anybody to be independent. No, they just want to steal from everybody else and give to others when really they're just going to take most of it. They are, because they had no problem destroying a country to get there. So do you think those are people that are going to care about your cause? No, they're just sociopaths. The heads of the nursing unions and associations, I'm sorry to say, are narcissistic sociopaths because they know this is the agenda they go along with. Really, what it's about is you want to be as independent as possible, as self-sufficient as possible, so that you aren't somebody else's slave. Okay? Every welfare system, those people are dependent on that government to give them that money. They do not give it because they care. They give it to keep you powerless. Yes, they do. There's a reason in Chicago, in LA, in New York, and all of these cities across the United States, these cities have these parts of it that are in ruins. And why can't any of the governors or the mayors fix that? They don't want to. They want to keep people helpless and powerless. The more people they can get on welfare systems, the more they have power over you. And at this point, if you're not wise enough to see you don't want the government controlling you, then you know what? I would imagine you won't wake up. Or you don't want to. You'll stay in your ego. So the near-term effects of the Cloward Piven strategy. In 2010, introduction to the original article, Francis Fox Piven wrote in the paper The Nation, our objective was not, as later critics of the Glenn Beck variety charge, to propose a strategy to bring down American capitalism. We were not so ambitious, but we did think that the minority poor and their allies might create sufficient disturbances to force reforms in the American income support programs. And we were not entirely wrong. Yep. And then the long-term effects of this strategy, while originally intended to bring about a socialistic guaranteed national income, remains a viable way to transform an entire nation. Indeed, many of the changes we see in America are consistent with this Cloward Piven framework. Yes, it is. They've been able to change immigration, all sorts of things doing this. It's the reason they create the crises. Yes, it is. So you want to be independent. Are there people that do need help with government? Because yes, there is. And there are exceptions that should be made for those people. But this is a party, and this is a sick, genocidal system, that these people that are doing this, that wants to create everybody to be victims, wants to create everybody to be helpless and hopeless and dependent on the government. And how do you do that? You open the borders and flood our country, like that's been happening for 2 years, with everybody and everyone, so that it will eventually overwhelm the healthcare system, breaking it, overwhelm the education system, overwhelm every system under the sun, giving these sociopaths that did this exactly what they want. Is then the Biden has to come in and fix it all, right? And then he controls everyone. And who will be behind Biden in this case? Well, the UN. So you do not want, I think it should be clear to anybody that has eyes to see and is willing to step away from their ego, that you sure as hell do not want AOC's agenda or Bernie's. It will lead to nothing but disaster. You want to be independent. You do not want to have to be dependent on others, because when you're dependent on others, it means they own your ass.